And hello, this is Chris Parker on the Business Simplicity podcast, and I'm having a conversation with Didier Marlier, a dear friend and fellow partner with the Enablers Network. Hey, Didier, in your words, would it be really, really valuable for people to listen to this fascinating conversation?
I honestly, Chris, I don't think it's of any value at all because when I did my MBA in one of the top three schools called IMD in Switzerland in 1988, there was no place where we spoke about love as a lever for leadership. Now, that was back in 1988. Ever since came disruption economy, which is asking us to profoundly challenge some of the orthodoxies we hold about leading. And in the same way that we're moving from smart leaders to a smart organization, from leading when I know, or because I know, to leading when I don't know. Leading from love is definitely one unusual, but extremely powerful and impactful way to lead. So that's why, in spite MBAs don't teach that for now, at least those that I do know, that's why I would recommend people to give it a chance.
So, in spite of what we might have learned back when we had MBAs, and you were a professor of mine in my
Yes,
MBA. So
I was a
in spite of that, you should you should definitely check this out wherever you get your podcast. It's absolutely marvelous. This gives you a good taste of what it's all about. Thanks so much.
The Business Simplicity Podcast, where we learn about strategies and tactics to succeed through simplicity, with your host, Chris Parker.
And welcome back to the Business Simplicity Podcast. This is Chris Parker, and I'm having a conversation with Didier Marlier, who is a dear friend, previously a dear friend. Previously, he was my leadership and organizational dynamics professor many years ago at Nairoda. I've been a customer, and currently I'm also a collaborator as a partner of the Enablers Network as well. So just delighted to have this conversation. Didier is, I guess, been an inspiration of what is possible in looking at leadership from different angles. And I'm sure we'll get into the Aristotle concepts of logos, ethos, and pathos. And I don't think you have to look very far to see the shadow of DDA throughout the book of Lead from Love with Rumi, because he's been so influential in my development as a person and as a professional. So it's absolutely delightful to have a playful conversation with DDA about leadership, love, discover a Rumi quote that is not in the book, and see where it goes, see what sort of yeah, I guess rabbit hole we can climb down, because we always do. So Didier, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Chris. And for me, having a conversation, which is what this is, with you is always a pleasure. Paying back the compliment, you've been an outstanding coach for me when we reorganized the Enablers network from what we call Enablers 1.0 to bring it to Enablers 2.0. Having progressed a lot, there's two of you who've been outstanding coaches, Marvin Four and yourself. And if there is something such as the Enablers Network 2.0, it thanks to you. So thank you very much. Pleasure to be here with you.
I think the magic of enablers, and I'm about to ask you to describe what the Enablers Network is, but for one of them, the magic of enablers is the individuals. And with any individual, we have their ups and downs and ins and outs. And for example, Doug, one of the fellow enablers, who we were doing this Lead from Love with the Enablers workshop recently, and he expressed some frustration and anxiety about a project he's working on. And it was beautiful. That sparked a conversation. I got in touch with him afterwards, and it's a group of people, highly professional, very diverse, creative, um, that are seeking to help each other, and help each other and help the organizations they work with, and essentially yeah, bring the world forward. So I'm curious, Deeds, on this day, what is your elevator pitch for the Enablers Network? Because it continues to evolve into something more powerful and beautiful. So, how would you describe the Enablers Network today?
I would be very immodest, very arrogant. I hope not too much. I would say that it's a community. It's not an organization. It's not a company. We are 35 members. All are owners because it's an association. So we're all members, therefore owners of it all. I gave the company, the name, the website, and everything to that association so that there's no longer a suspicion that maybe we do it for a given person who is more equal than the others. We're all equal. But I would say it reunites exceptional personalities. I like to quote two of the most, in a sense, extreme, Marie-Emmanuelle, half Vietnamese, half French, the highest graded officer, female officer in the French Navy, nuclear engineer, and her previous job was in aircraft carriers for the French Navy. So, right. And at the other opposite, you have Julio Arozarena, 17 years, the star ballet dancer of Maurice Béjart, choreographer who's done some choreography for Maurice and for other big troops. He was in the not so far away from you in the Flemish ballet. What is it? Ballet organization or whatever. So what unites those two people? What unites them is that they are really stars in their own right, in their own merits, in their own job. They're highly professional. And I'm not talking about the degrees that they have. I'm talking about how they put their heads and all of their energy into doing whatever work they get to do, be it in ballet dancing, choreography, or other things, coaching like today Marie-Emmanuelle does. But they also do it when we have together a given project to do. Second thing I'd like to say about those people, they're generous. And to me, that there's one value that really matters is generosity. And they are just generous people. Most of the arguments that we have is about how much money does everyone bring from a given project because they always want less. And whoever is the boss of the project wants to give them more, reducing their own part. It's just financial, but it just says a lot about how much we support each other. That's how I see it. It's a long pitch. So we are probably on the 70th floor by now.
Well, let me I'm enjoying it. So let me trigger you a little bit more. What type of work does the Enablers do, and for who?
I would say that we work for anything. I personally work in professional football in Switzerland in first division. Not everybody does. Nick McRoberts is also a conductor of a symphonic orchestra. As I said, Julio has his own troupe of his own corps, as we say in French, his own body of ballet. We work for a non-profit organization. I work in Africa, in Congo, to support Malaika, a non-profit organization that does schooling for young girls. And we work, of course, for small, medium-sized enterprises, for high-tech companies, and for big multinationals. And I would say that where we go is helping them to confront and to ride the wave of the disruption economy without being disrupted themselves or without being a victim of it. We help the change, the more psychological aspect of change, how to, not to convince, but how to engage your team into change intellectually, of course, but also emotionally and from their values. We do leadership development. Our competitors are the big business schools, and we do individual and team coaching. That's, if I were to simplify, that's what we do. And that requires specialists in neurosciences. We have an increasing number of strategists, marketing people. So we have a best friends agreement with a company called Centrex, which is coming from INSEAD, which was founded by INSEAD marketing superstar, Professor Jean-Claude Laréché. 95 of the top 100 MBAs use their Centrex business simulations into their courses. That's what we do. I don't know if it's clear. I hope a bit of clarity.
Well, I think it's very clear, and for me, my normal space is in management and leadership and technology organizations. Of course, doing that in a very human way. This is where I think I really make my change, and the joy for me in participating on some of these enabler engagements, like we did the agile transformation for a large chemical group in that was in China. So of course I was able to go to Disneyland as well, but to go there into that when the new Disney Shanghai opened up, that was a joy as well. But we were there primarily to work on that cultural transformation, for that large chemical group. And I learned so much, so it was kind of interesting in that moment when I was expecting to have more resistance, if you will, from the Chinese. And what I found is what we were sharing and engaging and co-creating with them, the Chinese were just really connecting with it. And it was their American colleagues that it kind of misfired with. And it's always interesting to see how these different cultures and what the perspectives are. So it's for me, it's just absolute learning and connecting. And so that's enablers. That's what brings Didier and I together. But let me flip the page and go into, exactly. Didier holding up on the video a book, Lead from Love with Rumi, written by Chris Parker. And let's just play with that a little bit. And one of the things I didn't do in the book, and we haven't spoken a lot about the book journey yet, Didier, but one of the things I didn't do in the book is be very prescriptive and definitive on what is love, because that is such a charged word, like God, love, leadership. These are things that people will be arguing about to the end of time. So what I'd love to do is just hear from you on what does love mean to you in the case in relation to, in the context of leadership. Like if I say, hey Dees, what does love mean to you in relation to leadership? What emerges within you when I ask that question?
Well, thank you, Chris. To take a very specific example, love is a successful consultant full of work that has plenty of work on his desk, who chooses to let go of money, of fees, just to write a book on love and leadership and how love can help leadership.
Yeah, it's definitely an act of love.
That's an act of love, absolutely, for the benefit of the people who are going to read it, for the benefit of his colleagues who all bought the book. I buy an average of 1 to 3 books per year, and yours is one of them. So, and this year I will have bought 3 books this year. And this is one of them.
Thank you.
Love is the way you speak to people, forgetting yourself and being there completely for them. You're not forgetting yourself to the point of not loving yourself. You're not forgetting yourself to the point of being manipulable, weak, absent, invisible. But you choose, when you are with someone, to entirely, fully, unconditionally be there for them. So this is what I see from you. I think I have in horror the people who are kind out of fear, kind out of weakness, kind because they're afraid to confront. That's not kindness. That's cowardness. That's not what I mean. You're, people who don't know you, you're 1 meter 90, 1 meter 95, with a body build like a ex-American football player. I assume you're not often attacked or approached by bad people in the streets just because of how you are. And your kindness is also the cradle of a very strong personality. So I wouldn't take your kindness for weakness. But when somebody like you has that sort of love, affection, respect, care for the other, that's true love. That's true love. I wrote three points which to me represent love. The first one is unconditional. And sorry, let me brief the people who watch us that unfortunately I'm not there yet, but that's what I'm aspiring to. But I'm nowhere on the three of them. But the first one is unconditionality. For me, love is unconditional. Is I love you for who you are. I don't love you because I would like to make you how I think you should be. I love you at the measure of you being how I want. Parents have a true unconditional love for their children. They will punish them if the child disobey. They will educate them. They will structure them. But I remember when I was sending my daughter to a room when she would really break the rules, she would scream, I don't love you. It's fine. I love you. Now you go to your room.
Mm.
So unconditionality to me is really, really important. There's a leader I really have a high respect for. I had the chance to meet once on backstage. Carlos Santana, the celebrated hero of pop and rock music. His affection for his team is unconditional. The care he has for the people, not just for the musicians, but for the roadies, for those who tune the instruments when the stars are still having last beer in their lodges, whatever. He cares. He's there entirely for them. So that's an unconditional leader. The second one after unconditionality is understanding. I really believe that our world going down the tubes of polarization suffers from a lack of willingness to understand. Understanding doesn't mean agreeing. Understanding means understand why you say that the wall behind me is black, when to me it's obviously white. Where do you come from? What does black mean for you? When I see the quality of your interviews, you seem to be practicing this understanding always. You're curious, you're open-minded, you want to understand why the person says what they want, and you leave the judgment for another stage, if ever. And the third one, which is probably linked to the unconditionality, is the no expectation. I think I'd like to be a loving leader, co-leader, one of the 35 to 40 people who are leaders of themselves, first of all, and of co-leaders of the enablers community. I catch myself still having expectation that they should, because they are part of they're not enough, they're not sufficiently. I guess love is no expectation. They are how they are. People are how they are. And they try to do and be their best because that's how they are. They have no better way. Maybe I can coach them. Maybe I can explain. Sorry.
No, I'm just enjoying what you're sharing. I would like to grab on this, and the way you've described it is from the context of love for another. How do you take this unconditional understanding, no expectation, and apply it to yourself in the form of self-love? Because one of the things that's absolutely paramount for me is and as you shared, I'm not there yet. But one of the things that I seek for is to be connected, caring, empathetic, present for myself, so that I can be in the presence of others in an unconditional understanding, non-judgmental way. So I'm just curious, how do you apply this to self-love?
It's one of the things one of the places I'm still having a lot to learn and progress, self-love. I tend to confuse self-love with ego. It's not the same. I don't need to go in depth to explain that. And for those of you who know MBTI, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, I'm a strong F, emotional personality. And for me, my F is where I love myself. My F, my values, is where I love myself. And that's where I stop to be unconditional, understanding without expectations when something is triggering my values. And so, unfortunately, my answer is going to be very short, or maybe fortunately. I need to learn the self-love much more than I do, and stop to confuse it with my ego, my values, my passion, my sensitivity. I just need to learn to love myself the way I am, with my weakness, with my strength, with my internal dialogue, which I don't have sufficiently of.
I believe that well, we all struggle with this, but the most authentic inspirational leaders for me, I believe, have been the people that have done that work, that have embraced themselves and have accepted, with a person, you have this physical self, this ego self, and this inner self. This is just psychology, I guess. And if you accept and embrace your physical self, if you overcome your anxiety ego self, and are really still, this is where my meditation comes in, and are operating from that inner strength, that inner beauty. I believe this is where leadership can become, life can be very very powerful and beautiful. So if you take unconditional understanding and no expectations, and if we apply that to business leadership, which I would argue management science says needs to be conditional. People need to understand me, and I am the strategy. We talked about that earlier today. That I am the strategy, and I have every high expectation upon you. It's more of maybe a traditional management perspective. So I'd love to have a playful conversation with you to say, how do you take this unconditional understanding, no expectation, and apply that to leadership in a time of dramatic disruption in the world? Because this is a constantly changing space. Where's the space for this kind of loving leadership in today's world?
Chris, I was thinking, you caught me off guard as usual with your question, and I like that. If I go back to the 3 points: unconditionality, understanding, and no expectation. Unconditionality, when applied, when lived, when be in leadership, creates psychological safety. We are a business. We need to make money if we are to survive, if we are to invest, if we are to do R&D, etc., attract the best. But I'm unconditional in my willingness to help you, to support you, etc. So unconditionality in business brings psychological safety, which we talk a lot about in my humble view. Understanding brings non-dualism. Understanding, we talk a lot about diversity, inclusion. Understanding goes one step further. It's really seeking to understand. That brings creativity, that brings innovation, that brings the capacity to identify and challenge the company, the business orthodoxies, the way we've always done things. Understanding is pushing people to go one step further. So understanding creates creativity and performance, in my humble view still. And no expectation is in fact not no expectation, because all the research shows that, that where you put people will perform at your level of expectation. So if I have no expectation about you, you're going to be underperforming. But no expectation is that once I have left the purpose, the deep intent, the values, the strategic intent of the company clear, I fully trust you to do what it takes to get there, to walk the talk, to be the values, and to reach the objectives of the strategic intent. So when I'm saying no expectation in business, it means once I have a leader I have done my homework, of course. I don't know if it's clear. My hope is that we will get there, but I have no specific expectation that you will do it that way, this way, that way, this way. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, and you weaved in deep intent and psychological safety, and yeah, those are beautiful words for me that if we have a shared purpose, a shared deep intent, a binding reason, and we are seeking to understand each other. And you mentioned diversity. And I'm seeking to understand maybe beyond um, what I physically see in you, whether your skin is dark or light or whatever, or your gender is whatever, or you're tall or short. To withhold the ego judgment and seek to understand the creative potential, even if that might be breaking some strongly held biases and expectations that I have. I think this is also where innovation happens. And if we're talking about disruption, where the economy is moving around so much, I think for me the innovation is in these spaces of discomfort. And if we are able to, as a leader, create that space, the unconditional, that psychological safety space where we are able to stretch and have confronting conversations with caring, non-judgmental yet open, maybe even hard conversations with each other. This is where the stretching and the growing comes from. More and more I'm curious what you're thinking, thought of on this. More and more I feel that the if we want a business to grow, okay, because we're all about business growth and moving the needle and talk about business growth. More and more I translate that into very literally, a business cannot grow unless the individual humans are growing as people. And in order for people to grow, that comes from tension and conflict. Because the tension and the conflict is like Rumi says, basically the mirror will not be polished unless there's friction. His quote is different than that, but it's the same thing. And therefore, is it not the leader's role to create that space for the tension and conflict in a healthy, respectful way for the individuals to learn and grow? Therefore, the company can grow. So for me, it's maybe simplifying too much, but this is where I'm at the moment. What's your reaction to any of that?
I like a business doesn't grow if its people don't grow. I see that. And once again, having your people grow is part of creating conditions for them to do and be their best. I like that quote from another Chris Parker. And it's that to me is the name. Look at these organizations where people keep on doing the same job. They get bored. They get into the routine. The routine become the orthodoxy. The orthodoxy is unchallenged. Business will not grow. And that again, why would you grow people? Because you love them. It's easier to keep your children under control, where dad and mom are giving the orders and they obey. It's much more of a challenge to develop your children and help them learn to think by themselves and to try by themselves. And love is about.
Yeah, well, I think this obey thing, triggering me now. I I I started writing the Lead from Love from Rumi while working in an organization that there was definitely in some parts of what they called leadership, the obey energy going on. And what I found for me is the obey. While it took a lot of effort to hammer everyone into subservience, there's a lot of action and effort. It also seemed just intellectually weak. It seemed lazy to me. Like wait, if you're just running around with a hammer hitting everything, this is just laziness. And maybe it takes a stronger person to put the hammer down and engage and have that conversation and say, hey, I think the company's going that way. And I believe you might be really energized and positive about contributing in this way. Does that make sense? Can we try this? Can we work it out? Is this a place that you can shine? Is this a place that you can even surprise me? you know, Instead of me setting the goal and hammering you into getting there, which I can only do. I can only hammer so many people at one time. Maybe that's why they're pyramidal. So the hammer is just hammering down. So, why don't we set the conditions for us to all surprise each other? Why isn't that the norm? Why isn't that the status quo?
And you describe here what resembles what I like and what I call first always the intelligent organization. It's easier to lead a stupid organization. It's predictable. It follows you. It's much more. We see that in football with coaches. You have dictatorial coaches, and you have quite a few in the Netherlands, who do that out of the laziness you mentioned, out of the lack, the insecurity, out of the ease it is. And you see people having a strong character, but loving, like Pep Guardiola, the coach of Manchester City. He's quite strong, but he loves his player. Or Vincent Kompany, who is not who lost yesterday, but who is working with Bayern Munich. Nobody was betting a cent on him. He loves his players, and he is developing an intelligent organization. My God, it would be easier to be a dictator and have everybody following them. But look at the results, at least Manchester City, and I'm pretty sure it's going to come with Vincent as well. So I'm with you, completely with you.
And this is kind of the essence of lead from love with Rumi. And I'm curious, the mysterious, the unexpected, when I'm presenting on this, I kind of jokingly ask, has any business strategy or plan ever in the history of mankind turned out as you expected it to? And everyone laughs and says, no, of course not. Okay, yes, we still need a plan. We still need a strategy. So we have a baseline, and you have to do that work for sure, and be open for the innovation, for the synchronicity, for the opportunities to come. But I'm curious, can you imagine where leading from love can have dramatically unexpected positive consequences, or maybe even negative consequences? Like what unexpected could happen from this?
Again, at the risk of repeating myself, I think that the leading from love will create this psychological safety, will create this unconditionality, will motivate people. Maybe it's me.
Yeah.
I've always functioned better at school with professors I loved and who were clearly loving us than clerks, people who were coming to deliver a course. Those professors who were leading by fear. But
Yeah.
I see you wanted to say something.
If I can reach in, you brought up your Carlos Santana experience, and if I remember correctly, there's a story behind that story when one of the support people gave some feedback. You know where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
Can you share that story? Because for me, that is and I haven't pre-thought about this, but that is, I think, an unexpectedly beautiful demonstration of leading from love.
Leading from love. It's the story is the event was that when Carlos Santana was asking for feedback from the crew, and not just from the stars, not just from the players, from anyone. The youngest, apparently, from the team dared to challenge or give feedback to the superstar, one of the superstar solo players, suggesting he might have overdone his part, hence bored the public, hence caused the team to work harder to get them back together. And Mr. Santana looked at the musician in question, saying, "Did you spend more time than usual?" Musician, you could see, was hesitant. Said, "Maybe I did, and maybe not. I don't know." Well, anyway, why don't we try? And leaving the room, Mr. Santana said, the kid was wrong. He played exactly the same as the day before and the day before. But if I tell the kid, you're wrong, I appear to defend the powerful, I appear to take side, and I appear to be punishing and humiliating the kid. Nobody else is going to speak up.
Hmm.
So what's going to happen tomorrow, the day after tomorrow? We'll play it a bit shorter, and I'll ask the kid, was it better? And if the kid is very honest, he's going to recognize actually that didn't make a big difference. And if any, it was probably better in the way he played before. So my apologies and thank you for having tried and taken my suggestions here. And you can see through that story how that creates the right atmosphere, the right creativity. And maybe the kid was right, and maybe he's going to be right another time, and maybe he'll pick up other things that don't go well, but he's encouraged. Once again, there's no fear, there's no power distance. It's just a wonderful
Hmm.
affection and mutual respect and generosity.
Yeah.
We're back to that.
Something happened to me about a year ago. It was very unexpected, and I got some feedback from this individual, appreciative feedback. I'm working with a lot of Egyptians that are Muslim, and I'm not really familiar with a lot of those customs and beliefs and values and rules. And let me, if I can tell the story in a shortened way, that we were able to successfully sell an early customer here in Europe. There was a wine importer, and I like wine, and I was excited about it. And when it came down to actually delivering the project, one of the senior person that we would have been counting on to do this said no. Like, what do you mean no? Like, well, why did you sell this? This is purely and utterly wine, and I'm not going to work on an alcohol project. Like, what do you mean? And so I had to understand, talk about, I guess, non-judgmental. I was like, well, where is this coming from? And there's this whole thing called halal and haram in Islam, and haram are forbidden activities. And I had no idea that there was a list of, I guess Christianity has, the 10 commandments and, thou shalt not kill and things like that. But one of those things is indeed, not to interact with alcohol. And what I came back to this person, and I was like, well, well done. He's like, what do you mean, well done? Because, what he expressed later was he was expecting to be punished. I said, no, well done. I think we have failed you as management to allow something to be sold that put you in a position that you had to man up and it's a startup when every euro counts, and say no. And I was like, well, absolutely well done. So I think we as leadership failed you. We failed to give the salespeople the right instruction on what to do and not to do. And then we failed to have the controls in place. So you had to do it. So what we ended up doing is creating a business policy, a business engagement policy on the type of work we do and the type of work we don't do. And a lot of it, like weapons, child labor, unethical practices. These are all things in my values as well. And then there's some other stuff like alcohol that, okay, I get it. I have values that are similar and different. And it was actually it turned into, I guess, what could have been a destructive moment for me. I was just guided by, okay, what is happening here? Like, okay, this is an intelligent, beautiful person doing clearly what they believe is right. I don't understand, so I guess coming into that understanding point,
Exactly.
and it was, and we made something of it. So it's, and I brought in maybe a little bit religious thing, but you had a certain Rumi quote about believers and unbelievers, which is not related to religion, but we had a little pre-discussion around what is a inspirational, moving Rumi quote for you, and why? And I'd like you just to share that, and then let's go down that rabbit hole and see what we discover.
Okay. I would say that all the quotes that are in your book, uh, most of them spoke to me and most of them are moving. I just was careful not to choose a quote you had already chosen because I didn't want to expose myself to ridicule and commenting what you had already commented better than I could do. So I took my books. I was introduced to Rumi when I was 16 years old. My mother bought me an interesting book on all the religions, the philosophical streams, and Rumi was one of them. There was, of course, Buddhism, Taoism, and all the others, Islam, and Christian religion. You name them, Confucianism. And so I went back to this book and found one that says, "Be certain that in the religion of love, there are no believers or unbelievers. Love embraces all." What I like there is, again, three bullet points. That's how I was taught to think. I'm very concerned for the moment. I once had a chance to drive back with somebody I find a genius and a strategist of these times, a Belgian guy called Nick Van Heck, who runs a company called Executive Learning Partnership. He's a friend now of us both. It was 10, 12 years ago. Nick said, "You know what worries me the most, Didier, is this tendency, this trend we have towards polarization." I understood polarization. I understood he was scared, but I didn't see how. I didn't see it as a big drama. After a few years of Bolsonaro, Trump, Orban, or Boris Johnson and others, and I apologize to talk about politics. These are my ways of thinking, and not everybody's supposed to have them. But having seen highly polarizing leaders in charge and how they left their countries, I am concerned. And I am concerned to see polarization take over the debates, the discussions that should be serene in business, the decision-making decisions being subjected to a polarization barrage, first, a shooting barrage. So when I hear, "Be certain that in the religion of love there are no believers or unbelievers, love embraces all," it is a great reminder of the non-polarization philosophy, ethics, non-exclusion ethics. The second one, I see that in the religion, in the practice, in the belief, in the ideology, in the way of being of love, there is no church, there is no, how would I say, institution. It is just a purpose, it's just a deep intent. And the third one, for a reason, it just triggers in me the thought of benevolence. Love embraces all. And as you know, in business, I really believe that performing culture are the fruit of high challenge, being demanding, and high support, being benevolent. And that's why I liked that quote of Rumi, not excluding any of the ones that you quote, but I
No.
just was trying not to be stupid.
Well, I'd like to grab onto that don't want to be stupid point, as the Rumi quotes are those were ones that were moving for me. I had written more essays as well that didn't make the cut for different reasons. And then so if someone hasn't got the book yet, my dream is, there's a short section in the beginning about introducing leading from love. It's like 10 pages long. And then if you can just kind of flip to, if you're looking for an inspiration, it's not really something you read front to back. You can if you want. And there's a couple different chapters in there. And you'll find a quote, "Let synchronicity happen." And then the quote can move you or not. And then I have my reflection that I tried to write in the most non-judgmental, non-directive way possible. And maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't. But there isn't a right or wrong there. So it's, so I would love it if people also disagree with it. Say, "Yeah, well, I think you're wrong." I'm fine. So there's little one can say about love. It has to be lived, and it's always in motion. And because it has to be lived and it's always, and I just picked that by random. then it's almost like there is no room for believers or non-believers, because it is fluid. It's in motion. It's universal. It's binding. It's connecting. And coming into the polarity thing, um, I think there's a strong similarity to this lazy, um, unconnected leadership and this love leadership. Meaning, of course, politics hone in on the differences that are emotionally triggering for us. And I think most of us are really drawn into that, like, oh, that other group is wrong. And we will go on marches and we'll carry our and we'll fixate on wrong. And I think it's that's so lazy, even of the 1% of their thoughts at that moment you disagree with. So then you vilify them and drive into polarity, when it might take a little more effort coming from a place of self-confidence and self-care and self-love and self-strength to say, okay, I disagree on that point, but 99% of you is just absolutely gorgeous, just absolutely perfect, absolutely human, absolutely, is you are pure love as well. So I think as long as we're fixated and on what the news is telling us about, that polarization will probably continue. And I think people are getting really fed up on it. People are seeing some of these conflicts and they're like, wait a second, there's a humanity that we are ignoring, that's suffering from some of these polarity driven conflicts. That is, and so I'm actually filled with optimism that we are starting to see beyond the newsreel and beyond the political, speaking points, and starting to make our own minds up and realize that there is a lot of similarities and a lot of beauty, but we're not there yet. So be certain that in the religion of love, there is no believers and unbelievers. Love embraces all. Yeah. Benevolence.
Exactly.
Mm. Okay. We're talking about polarity. There's one more question left, because these are the 5 questions, just so people that are listening. Season 4 of the podcast is, it's inspired by Rumi, but mostly it's inspired by beautiful people like Didier and having these playful conversations. And I'm curious, asking the question of, what is one thing people can do right now to bring more love into the world? And before I hand it off to you, I think that the thing that I would say, and I'm really, really, this is just where I am in my world, is be still, be calm, be quiet, meditate in the morning. I've kind of taken it from the 5 a.m. club. I don't wake up at 5 a.m., but 7:15. 7:15 club doesn't sound nearly as bold, but get up, do the running, do the sporting, have a meditative moment. I have my mat here in my home office. And then from that place of aliveness and reflection, plan your day. So I think my wish for people is create a moment of calm in their life, so they can be deliberate in what perspective they want to take on the actions and the triggers of the day. So as we're wrapping up this episode, which has been glorious for me, thank you, Deeds. What is one thing that people can do right now to bring more love into the world?
I used the word already, and I used it 3 times. Understand, understand, understand. Look at the wars we are surrounded with. I discussed recently with 2 people, actually completely opposite views on Ukraine and Russia for their barbarian conflict. And 2 intelligent, they happen to be males, 2 intelligent men, 2 men that had really very good facts. And I was thinking, well, if we could bring them and have that conversation with the 2 presidents, if they were truly interested into stopping this barbarian war. That would be so wonderful. Understand why the Russians decided to do what they do, understand why the Ukrainians decided to stand for where they stand. I'm not saying it's going to solve it all, because there are people who don't mean to understand. There are people whose passion and anger and hatred is above everything else. It's fine. Understand it's not the magic wand, the magic formula. But it's as a human being, if I want this world to progress towards love, understanding is in my view the first step. Without denying what you said, I don't do enough of meditation, but every time I do, I also started it at the age of 16. What a good it did to me. I totally agree.
Um, as a master of understanding, as I see you and feel you, when, so we're going off piste again, sorry. When people are, and I'm looking for advice or tactics from you, this is where I'm going with the question. When someone is confronted with another person that has radically different beliefs on something that I or that person is holding deep convictions about, so there is no space for dialogue on the surface. How can someone understand at that point? Like it's easy, we'll just understand each other, but like, what is a mechanism? Can you think of something that would say, hey, this is a way to understand? What do you think?
It's difficult. Going off piste is not an issue for me as a ski instructor. I love that. But you reminded me of a 2 hours drive I had from the airport of São Paulo to a beach, the beach resort of São Paulo called Guarujá. And the driver was supporting with passion and with all of his soul the far right candidate for presidency. And I happen not to have that opinion. And I thought that's going to be a very endless drive to the coast for him or for me. And I might end up on the side of the street for him saying, I don't take somebody like you. Okay, fine. I said, look, I happen to have just the opposite idea of you, but that's not the point. Can we try to refrain provoking, lacking of respect to the other side, not just to you and me, but to the people of the other side, and seeking to understand? And we had an amazing short journey to Gohuja with that taxi driver. He still has similar ideas, but he publishes them on his WhatsApp, less violently, with less violence. And I keep on calling him when I'm going to São Paulo to have him as my driver, because we have managed together to have a human, intelligent, understanding, respectful discussion on things that started very, very poorly. I think we're both proud of where we ended up with the discussion. Did I change his mind? No. But does he understand better the other side? Yes. Do I understand somewhat better the other side and why people would vote for a person like that person? Yeah, I don't agree, but I understand why some people vote for Mr. Trump, for why others will vote for Mrs. Harris, etc. I understand where they're coming from. It's fascinating to see that this poor lady who was killed during the attack against the Capitol, there was a woman who was killed, had voted the previous election for Mr. Obama, and she was attacking the Capitol. I'm not sure if it's on behalf of Mr. Trump, but on behalf of his stream of ideas. How can a person have gone from 180 degrees from one side to the other side? It fascinates me to understand. It would have fascinated me if she weren't dead, to understand where she came from when she voted for Mr. Obama in the previous election, and what made her change her mind and vote for Mr. Trump in the following election.
It what you did with the taxi driver is, it sounds like you were explicit about the invitation to say, hey, you were very clear. I believe differently. I believe the opposite. So I think like you clearly expressed your position, whereas maybe non-conflict would have been simply quiet. You said, hey, I think something else, and I'm interested. So can we, in respect, so just to vocalize and say, hey, I'm curious, I'm interested. I don't know, maybe you could have added, I am not going to try to change your mind, because but I'd like to understand. Let us have this moment. That can be a beautiful gift. Yeah. So
And Chris,
hmm,
look at how you coach people. Look at how we've been together quite a few times on the war front, in some of our seminars with sometimes very difficult, tense situation. And your attitude is that one in general. And it helps people. It helps people. It helps the seminar. It helps the negotiation. It helps whatever we are trying to do, but it helps the people who are into the grip, who are blocked into their conviction that I'm right and the other one is hateable, deserves my hatred.
hmm,
And look, who am I? Just a few minutes before you and I called, I transferred money to my girlfriend in Madagascar because her nephew fell from a 9 meter high tree, broken limbs, internal hemorrhage, broken skull. So I'm sending money because they have, at least this kid is coming from a very poor family. And an administrative worm at the at the transfer refuses because it says too much. And I'm first explaining that the law says so much and I'm way below that. That second of all, his organization has accepted the transfer. So there are people who don't think in his organization this is too much. And I can still feel the hatred if I'd had a gun.
hmm,
I would have really been. And knowing that I was going to talk about love a few minutes later, I can tell you it was it was it was quite a challenge. And that's also coming
hmm,
back to the fact I'm a passionate person. I'm under pressure because this kid is suffering and needs a cast, and he doesn't have a cast with two broken arms. And here I am with an administrative clerk who's trying to teach me the law of money transfer. No, but I must admit and confess my behavior was not in the line of what I discussed this afternoon with you, and I'm not proud of myself.
but that's to be human. I think to grab into the um for me, the love is this expression of love is the loving of myself, beyond my physical and my ego, um and realizing that there is a gloriously perfect inner human in that other person, regardless of what they look and feel and smell like, and then regardless of how they behave. There's an absolute beauty, um, perfect being for where they need to be. And then the gift is, we grow through tension to find find a way to have a joyful life, while living amongst each other. So and sometimes we particularly when you're confronted, with love and care for this young man who fell from a tree and needs urgent support. um yeah, I can absolutely imagine that someone putting a roadblock between you and caring for that person, that would trigger you. Of course it would. So mm, well, Didier Marlier, partner with Enablers Network. You can find you can find us at enablersnetwork.com. I am delightfully brought into transformation programs and coaching through Enablers. And I just really open the invitation that if your organization or you as a leader want to host this kind of dialogue amongst your whoever it is you're working with, whether it's your top executives or your management team or your specific team, there's some amazing loving, caring, strong people at Enablers that I'm sure would be delighted to help. So check it out at enablersnetwork.com. Didier Marlier, thank you so much for.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. Visit ebullient.com to download the Simple Business Design Framework. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite player.